Welcome back to Middle-earth Unveiled. Today we're talking about the Rings of Power. You know, those shiny little trinkets that turned Middle-earth into Sauron's personal chessboard. Crafted by elves, manipulated by a deceiver, and destined to reshape history, these rings were supposed to preserve beauty and power. Instead, they became tools of corruption. Classic Sauron. From Celebrimbor's dream of timeless creations to the fiery forges of Mount Doom, we're diving into the story behind the Rings of Power. Who made them? Why did they fall into Sauron's hands? And how did they corrupt entire kingdoms? Stay tuned. We've got betrayal, ambition, and just a little fiery doom coming your way. So grab your lembas, pour yourself an ale, and settle in. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how the Rings of Power were forged, the secrets they carried, and why their legacy changed Middle-earth forever. Oh, and just a fair warning, by the time we're done, you might find yourself whispering, "One ring to rule them all." Let's get started.
All right, let's dive into this. One of the most fascinating chapters, really, in Middle-earth history.
It is.
Sauron's deception and the creation of the Rings of Power.
Absolutely.
I mean, talk about a master manipulator.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, disguised as Annatar, pulled off one of the greatest cons of all time.
One of the greatest cons of all time.
And thankfully, we have sources that reveal just how he did it.
Yeah, it's a story that really, I think, speaks to us even today about the seductive nature of power and the dangers, really, of unchecked ambition.
Yeah.
And it all starts in Eregion, a realm of elven artistry, craftsmanship, where beauty and innovation just flourished under the leadership of Celebrimbor.
Celebrimbor. Now, there's a name that carries a lot of weight, right?
Yeah.
Grandson of Fëanor.
Yes.
One of the most legendary and some might say headstrong figures in elven history.
For sure.
Seems like ambition ran in the family.
Indeed. And that ambition, coupled with a deep desire to preserve the beauty of their world, made the Elves of Eregion particularly vulnerable to Sauron's schemes. They yearned to create works that could withstand the ravages of time, to hold back the inevitable decay that even the most exquisite things eventually succumb to.
So they were already primed, right?
Yes.
For someone to come along and offer a solution.
Yes.
Offer a way to achieve this seemingly impossible dream.
Precisely.
And that's where Annatar, the so-called Lord of Gifts, enters the picture, right?
Precisely, and it's such a powerful image to imagine.
Yeah.
This figure of radiant beauty and unparalleled wisdom arrives in Eregion offering knowledge and guidance.
Like, who wouldn't want that?
Exactly, promising to unlock these secrets of crafting artifacts of unimaginable power and longevity.
Right.
It's like a dream come true.
Yeah.
Especially for someone like Celebrimbor, whose ambition burned brighter than most.
Okay, but even in a realm of magic and wonder, right? Wouldn't there be some skepticism?
Yeah.
I mean, a stranger just waltzes in, offering power on a silver platter?
You would think.
Didn't anyone raise an eyebrow?
Well, there were whispers of caution.
Okay.
Figures like Galadriel and Gil-galad.
Oh, powerful names.
Yeah, seasoned leaders who had witnessed the darkness of the world.
They'd seen some stuff?
They'd seen some stuff. They sensed something amiss about Annatar.
Okay.
They warned Celebrimbor, urging him to be wary of the seemingly benevolent newcomer.
So there were at least some elves who had their guard up.
Yes, for sure.
That's interesting. So even in this haven of, elven wisdom,
Right.
there were those who recognized that, hey, maybe there's some deception going on here.
Yeah.
What was it about Annatar
I think
that set off their alarm bells?
the sources suggest it was more of a feeling,
Okay.
an intuition honed by centuries of experience.
You get a bad feeling.
They had a bad feeling,
You get a bad vibe.
They recognized a darkness lurking beneath Annatar's charm.
Right.
A subtle discord in his seemingly harmonious presence. Galadriel, in particular, possessed a deep understanding of the unseen forces at play in the world, and she sensed that Annatar's motives were far from pure.
So, despite these warnings, Celebrimbor chooses to trust Annatar.
It appears so, yes.
What made him so susceptible, do you think, to his influence?
It was a complex interplay of factors.
Okay.
I mean, Celebrimbor, much like his grandfather,
Yeah.
was driven by a burning desire to create,
Right.
to surpass the achievements of those who came before him.
Right, the ambition thing.
The ambition, exactly.
Yeah.
And Annatar, with his seemingly endless knowledge and alluring promises, offered a path to achieve just that.
So it's almost like he tapped into, his ego.
Yeah.
His desire to, leave a legacy.
I think so.
To be remembered.
Yes.
It makes you wonder if Annatar specifically targeted him, knowing that, hey, this guy, he's the perfect pawn for my game.
That's a fascinating point, and the sources do suggest that Sauron, disguised as Annatar, was a master manipulator, capable of identifying and exploiting the weaknesses of others. He likely saw in Celebrimbor a kindred spirit, someone driven by a similar thirst for knowledge and power, and used that to his advantage.
So how did Annatar actually convince the elves to create the rings?
Right.
Did he just straight up tell them what he wanted?
No, I think...
Or is it a more subtle form of manipulation?
It was a gradual process.
Okay.
A slow seduction built on trust and shared ambition.
Okay.
Annatar presented himself as a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
a guide, eager to share his vast knowledge with those eager to learn.
Right.
He didn't demand or command. Instead, he nudged and inspired, subtly steering the elves towards his ultimate goal.
It's like a classic tactic, right?
Absolutely.
Gain their confidence, make them feel like they're in control,
Yes.
and then bam, you've got them right where you want them.
Yeah, for sure.
So what was the first step in this grand scheme?
It wasn't just, hey guys, let's forge some powerful rings. It was far more insidious. Annatar began by teaching the elves new techniques, sharing secrets of craftsmanship that had been lost to time.
Right.
He guided them in creating lesser rings.
Okay.
Beautiful, but not inherently powerful. Honing their skills, deepening their trust in his guidance.
So like a master class in manipulation disguised as a generous act of mentorship.
Exactly.
And the elves, blinded by their desire for knowledge and their trust in this seemingly benevolent figure,
Right.
they just fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
They saw in Annatar a source of wisdom,
Yeah.
a beacon of enlightenment, not realizing that they were being groomed to create the very tools that would ultimately lead to their downfall.
Right.
And all the while, Sauron, hidden beneath that mask of Annatar,
Lurking in the shadow.
watching and waiting, yes.
Yes.
His true intentions shrouded in shadow.
It's chilling, really.
Yes.
To think how easily he manipulated these incredibly skilled and wise beings.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can be vulnerable to deception.
Right.
Especially when their desires cloud their judgment.
That's a really key takeaway here.
Yeah.
It wasn't about brute force
No.
or magical domination.
It was about understanding the desires and the vulnerabilities of his targets and exploiting them with such precision.
It makes you wonder what would happen if the elves had listened to those whispers of caution, right?
Right.
If they had been a little less trusting, a little more skeptical of Annatar's seemingly generous offer.
It's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the question for the ages.
Would the course of Middle-earth history have been altered?
We'll never know.
We'll never know, but what we do know is that the seeds of Sauron's grand deception were sown in those early days in Eregion,
Yes.
under the guise of friendship and shared ambition.
Exactly.
And the consequences of that deception would ripple across the land for centuries to come.
For sure. So we left off with the Elves of Eregion under Annatar's, tutelage,
Right.
honing their skills, crafting lesser rings, and really unwittingly setting the stage for something far more sinister.
Right. And all the while,
Yes.
Sauron is playing this long game,
Absolutely.
manipulating events from the shadows. It's like, I don't know, he's like a puppet master or something.
That's a very apt analogy.
Yeah.
Sauron, even in his fair form as Annatar, was always several steps ahead,
Yeah.
anticipating his opponent's moves,
Right.
exploiting their strengths, and ultimately turning their aspirations against them.
So how does he go from, teaching the elves to like forging these incredibly powerful artifacts?
Right.
Is it just like, okay, class dismissed, now let's make some rings that can control the very fabric of reality?
Not quite that dramatic,
Okay.
but the transition was certainly subtle.
Okay.
Remember, the elves were already striving to create works of lasting beauty and power.
Right.
Sauron, or rather Annatar, simply nudged them in a specific direction,
Yeah.
feeding their ambition while subtly corrupting their goals.
Right, so he's playing on their existing desires,
Exactly.
twisting their noble aspirations into something
Yes.
a little bit darker, a little more sinister.
Right.
But we're talking about multiple rings here, right?
Yes.
7 for the dwarves,
Right.
9 for men, 3 for the elves.
Correct.
Did he have a specific plan for each set?
Absolutely. Sauron's plan was nothing if not meticulous.
Okay.
He understood that each race possessed unique strengths and weaknesses, and he tailored his rings accordingly.
Right.
So the 7 given to the dwarves were designed to amplify their inherent love of craft and their desire for wealth,
Right.
ultimately driving them toward greed and isolation.
Okay, so instead of preserving their world, as the elves intended,
Right.
these rings would ultimately sow discord
Yes,
and division among the dwarves.
that's right.
Almost tragic, really.
Yes.
How he took something so beautiful, the act of creation,
Yeah.
and twisted it into a tool of manipulation.
Precisely. And the 9 given to men,
The 9, yeah.
well, they were perhaps the most insidious of all.
Okay.
Sauron knew that men, particularly those in positions of power,
Right.
were easily seduced by promises of glory and dominion.
Yeah.
These rings offered a taste of immortality, a path to greatness that ultimately led to darkness and servitude.
Right, we're talking about the Nazgul,
The Nazgul.
those terrifying ring wraiths bound to Sauron's will,
Yes.
forever enslaved by the power that he gifted them.
Yes, enslaved by their own desire.
Yeah, it's like this
Right.
cautionary tale about the allure of quick power,
Yes.
the dangers of unchecked ambition.
Exactly.
And then we had the 3,
Yes.
crafted by the elves themselves,
Right.
believed to be unpainted by Sauron's direct influence.
At least initially.
But if Sauron wasn't directly involved in their creation,
Right.
how did he plan to control them?
Right.
I mean, surely he wouldn't just leave these incredibly powerful artifacts
Right.
to chance.
That's where things get really interesting. While Sauron didn't directly forge the 3, he poured a significant portion of his own power and will into the very foundations of their creation.
Okay.
He corrupted the very essence of their being,
Oh, wow.
ensuring that even these seemingly pure rings would ultimately be bound to his will.
So it's like a backdoor,
Yes.
like a hidden vulnerability that he could exploit later on.
Exactly. A seed of darkness that would eventually bloom.
Right, like he infected them with a virus or something.
A very apt analogy.
Yeah.
And to ensure his complete control over all the rings,
Okay.
Sauron embarked on a secret project of his own,
Uh-oh.
deep within the fiery heart of Mordor.
Wait, Mordor?
Mordor.
That doesn't really sound like a place where beautiful things are created. We're talking
It's
about.
the land of shadow and despair.
Yeah, Sauron's home turf.
Exactly, in the heart of Mordor,
Go ahead.
amidst the smoke and ash of Mount Doom.
Right.
Sauron forged the One Ring, a master ring imbued with his very essence,
All right.
designed to rule over all others.
So this is where things take a seriously dark turn.
Yes.
We're going from, elven workshops and aspirations of preservation
Yeah.
to a volcano of doom and instruments of domination.
That's the essence of Sauron's deception, isn't it?
Yeah.
He took something beautiful, the act of creation,
Right.
the desire to preserve,
Mm-hmm.
and twisted it into something monstrous, a tool of control and tyranny.
So he basically set up this whole elaborate scheme,
Yes.
manipulated the elves, dwarves, and men,
Mm-hmm.
and then forged a master ring to rule them all.
To control them all.
It's almost diabolical in its brilliance.
Diabolical indeed.
Yeah.
And the scariest part,
Is that that?
it almost worked.
Oh, whoa.
If not for a few key acts of defiance and a whole lot of luck,
Right.
Sauron might have achieved his goal of total domination.
So Sauron's plan,
Mm-hmm.
it worked for a while,
For a while.
but he didn't win in the end.
No.
How did that happen?
How did his plans get disrupted?
Yeah, who or what?
Well, it wasn't a single hero or a decisive battle.
Right.
It was really a combination of factors.
Okay.
I mean, you have the resilience, the defiance,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little bit of,
Luck.
fate.
Oh.
Remember those elves
Right.
who sensed Sauron's deception from the start?
Yeah, the ones who listened to Galadriel and Gil-galad.
Yes, they refused to wear their rings.
Right, right.
They recognized the danger they posed.
Yeah, but could they alone stand against Sauron?
That's a good question.
He had armies and fortresses.
He did, and the power of the One Ring.
Right, right.
True, the elves alone couldn't defeat Sauron,
Mm-hmm.
but their act of defiance was so crucial.
Okay.
They planted a seed of resistance,
Right.
a spark of hope that would eventually ignite into a full-blown rebellion.
Okay.
When Sauron attempted to assert his dominance through the One Ring, the elves sensed it.
Mm-hmm.
They removed their rings,
Okay.
severing the connection.
But they cut him off.
They cut him off,
Yeah.
denying him the full extent of his power.
So they couldn't directly confront him.
Right.
But they found a way to weaken his grip,
Yes.
to kind of mess up his control over the other rings.
Exactly. And this act of defiance inspired others.
Okay.
Men and dwarves who had not yet succumbed to the influence of the rings
Right.
joined forces with the elves, forming the last alliance.
Powerful name.
It is a desperate
Yeah.
but determined coalition united against Sauron's tyranny.
Now we're talking epic battles.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Legendary heroes.
Indeed.
This is where the story takes off.
Yeah, the War of the Last Alliance was a conflict unlike any other, a clash of civilizations, a struggle for the very soul of Middle-earth.
It's incredible to think
It is.
that even in the face of such overwhelming odds, there were those who just dared to resist.
Yes.
To refuse to just bow to Sauron's will. What drove them?
I mean, what drove them?
Was it just survival?
Well, the sources suggest a combination of factors.
Okay.
Certainly the instinct of self-preservation.
Right.
The desire to protect their homes, their loved ones, but also a deeper yearning for freedom.
Okay.
A refusal to surrender to tyranny.
Yeah.
A belief in the inherent goodness of the world, even in the face of overwhelming darkness.
That's powerful.
It is.
It's this reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure.
Right.
That courage can bloom in the most unexpected of places.
For sure.
So how did this conflict actually play out?
Well,
Did they defeat Sauron?
well, the war raged for years.
Okay.
A brutal and bloody affair. Left scars across the land.
Right.
But eventually, the tide began to turn.
That good.
The combined forces of men, elves, and dwarves pushed back against Sauron's armies, driving them back towards Mordor.
Okay.
The final confrontation took place on the slopes of Mount Doom.
Right.
The very heart of Sauron's power.
Wow.
It was a desperate battle.
Yeah.
Chaotic battle.
Right.
This whirlwind of steel and fire and shadow.
So this is it. The climax.
The climax.
What happened?
Did good triumph over evil?
Yeah. Give me the ending.
Well, the details of that final battle are shrouded in legend.
Okay.
But what we do know is a young prince of men named Isildur,
Okay.
son of the High King Elendil,
Wow.
managed to sever the One Ring from Sauron's hand,
Okay.
breaking his physical form
Right.
and scattering his forces.
So it wasn't a glorious victory.
No.
It was more like...
temporary setback.
Right. So Sauron's physical form was destroyed.
Yes.
But his spirit endured.
His spirit endured, bound to the One Ring.
Oh, wow.
Waiting for an opportunity to reemerge.
Right.
And as long as that ring existed, the threat of his return lingered over Middle-earth.
Like a shadow.
Like a shadow.
So the seeds of future conflict were already there.
They were sown.
But what happened to the ring?
Ah, the fate of the One Ring.
Yeah.
That's a tale for another deep dive.
Okay. But before we get into that,
Yes.
let's reflect on what we've learned here today.
Yeah, what have we learned?
About Sauron's deception.
We've witnessed the seductive nature of power.
Right.
The ease with which even the wisest can be manipulated.
Yeah.
And these devastating consequences of unchecked ambition.
We've seen how a single act of defiance can spark a rebellion.
Yes.
And how courage and hope can endure even in the darkest of times.
Absolutely. We've explored the complexities of choice. This enduring struggle between good and evil.
Right.
And really the impact that even seemingly insignificant actions can have on history.
And even in a world of fantasy.
Right.
Like we've been talking about here.
Yeah.
These lessons from the past, they hold a surprising relevance to our own lives.
They do.
It's true.
So the next time you're faced with a difficult decision,
Right.
or tempted by a seemingly easy solution,
Yeah.
remember this tale of Sauron's deception.
Right.
Question your assumptions. Consider the long-term consequences.
Yeah.
And never underestimate the power of a single act of courage.
Very well said. And remember, folks, knowledge is power.
Yes.
But wisdom lies in knowing how to use it.
That's right.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop seeking truth.
The truth is out there.
Even in the most fantastical of tales.
For sure.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive of Middle-earth Unveiled, the Rings of Power, symbols of ambition, beauty, and a whole lot of bad decisions. From Celebrimbor's forge to Sauron's fiery schemes, we've uncovered the brilliance and betrayal behind these legendary artifacts. But don't get too comfortable. The story doesn't end here. Next time, we dive into the ultimate artifact of power, the One Ring itself. What made it so terrifying? How did it pass from Sauron to Isildur to the shadows of history? And most importantly, how did it change the fate of Middle-earth forever? Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, Middle-earth isn't just a story. It's a world of lessons, warnings, and wonders. This is Middle-earth Unveiled. See you next time.